epicenter of this problem, and how as a sustainability consultant, we can find the right and fair solutions to the problems that we are grappling with. And I'm really glad that to speak on a topic which talks about economics within planetary boundaries. This being a decade of action, acting on the climate is the most essential thing that we all need to do. We are no separate from nature. We can't emphasize on this point more than this. Human nature balance is what will sustain us on the planet. Planet will do without us. The point is, what are we going to do without it? I have to give credits to Mrs. Kate Raworth, whose works I have read extensively. She's a proponent of donut economy and brings a disruptive uh, and a kind of a new formula and a principle how to go forward and do a sustainable growth. Planetary Boundaries itself was discovered by 29 Earth system scientists led by Johan Rockström and Will Steffen way back in 2009, if I'm not wrong. And we will be combining these two principles together and see that how in real estate sector or other sectors, we can bring these two parameters together and see what is the way forward going in a sustainable growth pattern. See, economics is the mother tongue of public policy, the language of public life, and the mindset that shapes the society. In these early decades of 21st century, the master story is economics. The economics beliefs, the values, the assumptions that are shaping how we are thinking and how we are going forward.
Dr. Kaur, it's very important. Sorry to interrupt. I would request you to be slightly louder, and probably we are not able to see your screen.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it better? Give me a feedback. How is it now?
नहीं, आपको share करना होगा.
All right, one second. Does this get better?
Yes, definitely.
One second, let me do it in a full screen as well. Does it come on a full screen, Rao?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yes, absolutely good to go.
Till where people were able to hear, if you could please update me on that.
No, we heard the whole thing, just you were a little softer. It's
great. So now that the economics is what is driving our thought process and our actions, let me just throw a picture in front of you, and this is for everyone. See if anyone can guess what it is. Let's play this game. Anyone? Let me kill the suspense in that case. This is a cuckoo's nest. You know, the cuckoo is one of the nasty cheat bird that sometimes leaves its eggs into another bird's nest. So sometimes someone else can take care and raise the chicks. And it is one of the nature's best performers of trickery and deceit, but it's definitely not stupid. And it is fooling someone else. And why I'm throwing this picture to you is to keep this picture in your mind throughout the presentation, that what is being thrown to us, maybe we will see that it is one of our eggs, a thought process which is, for our benefit of our own kind, but maybe it is not. And we need not get fooled by such thoughts. We need to question everything that is thrown to us. So the next thought that I throw in front of you is a cuckoo plan 01, which is the GDP. All of us know what GDP is a gross domestic product. It's a financial metric that breaks down a country's economic output per person and is calculated by seeing what is the GDP and then divide by the population, and we get a certain number of it. Where is this number coming from? Where is the definition was coming up from? These were the times when, when we were going through economic depression, there were world wars happening, Cold War happening, and the nations were, especially the US and USSR, there was a complete rivalry between these two nations, and they're trying to prove who has the global supremacy. So how do you prove that you are supreme than other or you're better than other? You needed a metric. So smartly, the economists came up with something which we define today as a GDP, and say that GDP is the perfect metric that will define how we are growing together, how a nation is performing, and who's supreme and who's not, who needs to improve on that. But the definition of the GDP, how it has come up, is again, is fooling us. I'll tell you, and this particular point is a very, very important part, especially because we are discussing on a platform of MAHI, which is of all women group coming up together and telling that, the voice of women needs to be heard because it is otherwise not being heard. And I'll tell you how it is related to GDP. So a person which sets out of his house and is out on producing a product or a service, that is being evaluated in a certain metric, and that goes as an aggregating those metrics to tell that how as nationally we are doing what kind of production, quantum of production, and how fast that production is happening. But what the biggest flaw that has happened in this one is that how that citizen, whether it was a man or a woman, mostly it was men, when they stepped out of those four walls, no one cared to look under those roofs, that who were the caregivers, who were helping these people be ready for the GDP to be produced for a nation. So for example, to make it again simpler and easy to understand, let's say a person in US who had a household help coming up and telling, okay, I pay you this much and you do cooking, you take care of my kids, you do this, you do that, I'll pay you that much. The payment goes and gets aggregated into the GDP of the country. But the moment that man marries that woman or the caretaker and no more pays that person, at the face of it, nothing is changing. But that quantum of the GDP gets reduced from the equation. So though the effort is same, but the GDP, how it was being evaluated is actually very biased, is distorted. So the economists, when they were telling a definition of GDP, they were telling it only in terms of market. What comes to the market gets produced in terms of products and services is of value and nothing else. But the society is much, much bigger than this one. We do have a market for sure. That is definitely a good metric to evaluate what is happening. But there is a household. Then there are commons. Commons in the sense, I volunteer to do something in the society. I take care of a lake. I go and take care of a school. I provide my services, but it is not being counted into the GDP. But then it is also value added contribution to the resilience and to the growth of a society, which is not being evaluated under this metric. And this GDP has taken so mindlessly being taken up as a flawed metric of the total evaluation of the growth, that it is actually affecting our sitting like a cuckoo's egg into our mind and telling, no, this is the only thing which should be looked upon, and it will only decide that how developed a country you are or how developed a person that you are. So there are inherent flaws into it that needs to be seen. A metric should remain as a metric and should not become a goal in itself. Unfortunately, in all the international platforms, in the medias and everywhere, everything is being evaluated in terms of GDP, and it's a very, very narrow approach. Now going to the second cuckoo plan 02, what is happening as occupying our mind space into a very distorted fashion. Humanity is being seen as a rational economic man, and all economics that is being taught, how we are trained in the schools is compete, compete, compete. And eventually, though you are into a community, you like playing as a child into a group, but as you grow, you are into a competitive world where everyone is telling you that there have been such a horrendous statements coming up from UK and US leadership where they're telling you and rationalizing this thing that humanity is nothing. There's nothing called humanity. There's nothing called community. There's only an individual that stands, and how it is being projected. You stand alone, as money in your hand, ego in your heart, a calculator in your mind, and nature at your feet. This is how all the ecosystem, which is glaringly speaking to us and telling you to be that. Compete, compete, grow indefinitely, and that's how the humanity has to evolve. So you are a rational economic man. And if you're not there, you are a fool. Actually, you are being fooled by telling you that, because that is not the way. And we'll come to know why. I will come to another cuckoo plant 3. We had a, a scientist by the name of Kuznets, who actually made everyone believe that growth can be infinite, and growth has its problem. It will bring inequality, but eventually things will start. So he took some empirical data from historical data from here and there in different countries into different design patterns. He took it, and then he drew this curve, this inverted parabolic curve. And he said that inequalities will keep increasing, will stagnate after some time, and eventually it will all correct itself and it will come down. So this is what the 20th century economics was making us believe. And same principles were being applied to the environment also. Keep going, keep doing industrialization, the pollution will increase, water bodies will get affected, air will get polluted. No mind, it will go to a certain extent, then it will stagnate, and at some point of time, it will still self-rectifying it, and things will go back to its own space. Is that so? Or are we being fooled? I'm bringing another example in front of you. All of you must be knowing about this game Monopoly, which we all have played sometime or the other. Now, the inventor was, in 1903, inventor is a lady, Elizabeth MAHI, so all women, yeah. So she was very judicious and she had a wisdom in her, and she brought this game out to tell that how the society can go in playing the same game, but with different set of rules. Prosperity set of rules and monopolistic set of rules were set into motion. That means you can play the same board game by using two kind of rules. So I'll just read out. Prosperity was every player gained each time someone acquired a new property, and the game was won by all when the player who had started out with the least money had doubled it. How beautiful. That means when the distribution of the achievements or the economy was being passed out to the lowest rung of the society. And against the other set of rules, the monopolistic says players gaining by charging rent to those who were unfortunate enough to land on their properties, and whoever managed to bankrupt the rest was the sole winner. And this whole thing was a game of wisdom. Actually, it was called the game of life. It was actually called initially the landlord's game. That how the society, when it owns and it distributes the economic gains out of properties in this way, can actually change the whole paradigm for the society. How everyone grows into the society can be changed. But lo and behold, this whole patent was bought by Parker Brothers. They did not put the prosperity set of rules in action. They only brought this whole game, the landlord games, into the name of monopoly with only monopolistic set of rules. And this is a perfect example, practical demonstration of the present system of land grabbing with all usual outcomes and consequences, where we see where most of the citizens are grappling that how to find a good accommodation, a good house for themselves. Sometimes people live for their whole life and they are not able to build up a good house for themselves. This is a kind of an economic equations which are put into the systems, which are not letting the society grow as together and not letting the whole benefits of the society pass on to the lowest rank of the society and to everyone for that matter. So this is something that we need to understand, that what is being fed, what is this cuckoo effect that is getting into our heads, by which we are bewitched by these kind of equations and telling as if this is the way, this is the norm, this is how we grow. But then something more is happening. So 20th century economics is telling us to believe it's a supply-demand system. Market is the GDP, driving the GDP, nothing else. Humans, there is no humanity. There is an economic man who's standing, nature at his feet, and GDP is a hockey figure. Go up, up, infinite, as much as you want, you can keep going. Is it? We saw what happened at the end of the 20th century. 21st century began with financial meltdown, climate breakdown, protests happening all over the world. How have we not forgotten that what happened to all of us at the COVID? And what happened to nature when we were inside, how the nature came back? What kind of effects the Anthropocene was having, the humanity was having on nature? We all saw it happen. So if this GDP formula was good, if this infinite growth was happening, why is it that in the 21st century, we are seeing such kind of a drastic effects happening climate-wise, humanitarian-wise, health-wise? So these are questions that need to be answered. Because the assumption that was made was something that I highlighted earlier is what was happening into our houses is not being accounted in our GDP. And this, another very important thing is we have assumed Earth is an infinite resource. Resources can be dug, and we can go infinitely, and then they're not going to get over. Maybe at that population, maybe at that time, we were at that curve, we were at that part of the curve where we can assume it's going to be infinite. But now today we have come to a point where we have dug so much, we have polluted so much that we are standing on an edge. Resources are depleting. Food per capita had gone to a certain level, but afterwards it's going to come down. We are standing at a point of collapse. We are coming and standing at the peripheral edge at which resources are not there, climatic conditions are not in our favor, and human as community, we all know that there is a more amount of loneliness and a kind of a depression which is setting into the society, which earlier maybe had a better sense of happiness and sense of balance in itself, if I'm allowed to say that. So if we are talking about resources, we have to think about Earth. Earth is not an infinite system, but it is a finite system in which there are basically 5 systems which are in coherence with each, or in a dynamic equilibrium they are. Geosphere as the land parcel that we know of, life forms where we have flora and fauna, cryosphere where all pristine water is basically frozen into ice forms in North and South Pole, oceans, which itself is a huge, beautiful world in itself, responsible for this dynamic whole thing to remain in balance for a very long time, from one ice age to another ice age. As we are transitioning into the Holocene age, we are now actually becoming so deterrent into our thing that we are actually now renaming it as Anthropocene age. But we have been given a kind of a window here from one ice age to another ice age where we are able to live as Homo sapiens that we know of ourselves. Atmosphere, air, which basically provides oxygen for us to all live, breathe, and be what we are today. So the planetary boundaries, scientists again did a lot of parameters taking from here and there, and they came to a conclusion that primarily there are 9 planetary boundaries, which are basically ensuring that the whole planet remains into a kind of a systematic balance, a kind of a dynamic balance. It's like you must have seen in circus when a person on a tightrope, when it is walking, there is a certain buffer that a person can take on a left and right, that you can the center of gravity can move a little bit out there, and the person can manage moving it forward. Similarly, just assume that the Earth is also like that. It has buffer system to absorb a certain amount of pollution, a certain amount of your carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases or temperature and all, and it can come back into its balance form and so on and so on. But what if you push that person or you push that Earth beyond those kind of boundaries, which otherwise become so difficult that it becomes irreversible and it is impossible. The breach is so much that now it is impossible to bring that balance back into the equation. So just to name it, planetary boundaries, nothing too technical about it, but just to know about it. Climate change, that what happens because of the carbon dioxide, about 350, we are at a range ppm, which is marginal, 400 is dangerous. We are going much beyond that. And we know the temperature rises according to the Paris Agreement. We have way forward, gone beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade. We don't know how to bring that back again. Introducing novel entities like chemical pollutions, how our industries, our households we are just pumping up all the pollution into our water bodies as well as soil. Primarily the chemical pollutions, the biosphere integrity, because of the biodiversity laws, how we are bringing more roads, cities, settlements are coming up, and it's coming at the cost of basically the deforestation, and the land system is changing, and we are seeing the biodiversity loss. Fresh water, as the population is increasing, as the industrial manufacturing is increasing, the rate at which the water is being dug out and being used is at a mind-boggling pace. In fact, the next wars that being anticipated is will be for the water. That much kind of a danger is being foreseen. Biogeological chemical flows, nitrogen and phosphorus cycles. Naturally, the nitrogen phosphorus cycles, nature has its own way of fixation it. But because of the artificial fertilizers being put, you will be amazed that it's only 5 to 10% of the fertilizers that we put in that the nitrogen phosphorus goes back to the plants. Rest of all is percolating through our soils and going and polluting our water bodies. Ocean acidification was 25% of the carbon dioxide that is there in the pollution in the air is being absorbed by the ocean itself. As the carbon dioxide increases, it goes and gets absorbed into the ocean. It plays havoc with the pH values. Acidification happens, and how the shells and the other coral reefs they manage to do in this sensitive ecosystem, it is getting imbalanced, and we are seeing the maximum amount of biodiversity loss that's happening is under the ocean. Atmospheric aerosol loading, which is happening because of mainly due to CFCs, that is happening, air pollution, particulate matters, then stratospheric ozone depletion. Ozone hole was widening, but fortunately, this is the only parameter which is actually it is receding. We don't know why, but it is receding, so that's the only good news. So what's happening is that now that we know this 9 of these identified boundaries are there, and climate change, biodiversity loss, and nitrogen cycles were the first ones to be identified, which were breached. 2005, 7 of them have been breached, and 2023, we are standing where out of this 9 boundaries assessed, okay, we have assessed 9, out of that 6 have been crossed. 2007 had been assessed, but 4 were crossed. So we are really at the verge. We have left out on 3 only that are also into the danger zone. So we have literally standing at the edge of the ecological balance on the planet. And how it is varying from the country to country is also different, because how the footprint of the individuals is varying. So in Kenya, maybe the development has not happened much. Costa Rica is just picking up. Denmark and United States are standing as the leaders in causing that kind of a damage. So we need to do this kind of an audit, not just globally as an Earth system, but country-wise, region-wise. What do we need now? If we are breaching these boundaries, we need a compass for human prosperity. How can we keep growing? We need to grow. The population is growing, aspirations are growing. We need to keep growing. So how do we grow? How do we sync up with the sustainability development goals? How do we respect these planetary boundaries? There is a thought process which has to come, and that's like where studies that I have done on Cape River has something which has really influenced me big time, and it makes a lot of sense, and that's where I'm sharing out here is that we are designing an economy which is a safe and just space for humanity, in which the lower space is defined by the social foundation. That means the advantages of this growth is passed down to each and every person possibly, to every nation if possible, in all formats and divisions of the life that affects us as a human being on one side. But we do not cross these ecological ceiling boundaries that otherwise we are already standing to be breaching them. So the change of the goal, it is time to evict that cuckoo out of the nest. That's why the picture has to stay in our mind. GDP is not the criteria on which the growth needs to be measured. We need to redefine that how this growth needs to go forward. As we are saying, okay, we are developing, but we are developing in a sustainable way. We are developing in a resilient way. Can we keep doing this for the generations and generations to come, knowing fully well that the earth is has got limited things to offer to us. It's not an unlimited thing where we can just keep going, gobbling up everything and say, I am the one to dictate. Everything is for me. It's time that we change this thinking. Cuckoo out of the nest. Let's get our own eggs inside. The donut and its data. I don't know how much time do we have. Am I going too much? Please let me know. Manasvi?
It's interesting. Go ahead, please.
All right. Okay. Right. So on one side, how do we, just to explain this donut economy a little bit on this side, that climate change, at most we can have 350. We are saying that we are already at 400 ppm and rising, worsening very fast. Some of the cities are actually creating a kind of a situation which is impossible to breathe also. Ocean acidification, 80% allowed, 84% it is. And I'm just saying a figure which is an year back, so this must be worse than that. Nitrogen and phosphorus, 62 million tons per year allowed. We are at 14 million tons per year already. Freshwater withdrawals, 4,000 kilometer cube per year allowed, and we are already at 2,600 danger lines. Land conversion, 75%, 62% already there. It's not just about 62% there. Where the thickest forest was standing, if it is gone, we have not done these calculations, do not account for that. Biodiversity loss, at most 100, and now we are standing at 100,000, which is like scary figure right now. Air pollution, I'm sure they must be so scared about putting the figures out there. Ozone layer depletion, 273, 275 allowed, and 283. How can we retain within these range, specified scientific ranges on the other side, when the food, health, education, energy, housing, gender equality, social equality, peace and justice is being given to every strata, to every person on every strata of the society? How can we do that? How can we ingenuate that kind of a economics of operation for the world? So how can humanity get into the donut? So everything is all about thoughts. What we think, we are, and our actions are decided by that. Till now, it is all about take, make, use, throw, linear. That's how we do. There is enough for everyone. Let's all keep doing it, and that's it. From that linear thought process, now we have to go into the circular thinking, a regenerative thinking, in which we have a design thinking approach to everything, a thinking which basically takes account all parameters, whether it is a societal parameter or it is an ecological sustainability parameters. And we are distributive by design. And I'll come to an examples to explain that how can we do both? So from the linear, go to the circular model, from degenerative, go to the regenerative. And when we are thinking about the economics of growth, market, as you see in the center part, market is just one part, one paradigm that needs to be handled. There are three more important paradigms which need to contribute to this growth evaluations that we are doing: household, commons, and states. And we have, of course, everything is about flow of energy. It is happening. It's how we are managing all of this as it enlivens and brightens the life, but every from microscopic to the macroscopic level of life, that it thrives it sustains it, and it makes the earth resilient for generations to come. So we need to look into it. All these social parameters, social foundations, stand on these social foundations, not that human that stands on nature, but a human with a thought process, with a safe and space for humanity, thinking in those terms into a design thinking approach where social foundations form our base and our ceiling is defined by the ecological ceiling of the planetary boundaries. Landscape degradation needs to stop. We need to go from degenerative to the landscape restoration and be regenerative. From linear manufacturing, circular manufacturing. How can we bring the materials into a circular loop so that life cycle analysis, life cycle costing becomes the inherent part of the manufacturing ecospace? We need to come up with a national database on what is the carbon footprint of every material that comes up with. What are the policy frameworks that we are making for different industry? How is the carbon being accounted into the hard to abate sectors? How is that we are bringing the circular economy into it? And the most important part, which the life cycle does not take care of, it is also the water footprint. Water is becoming the most premium element, which is not being even ingrained into the calculation of the life cycle analysis. We need to also come up with those KPIs. What is energy footprint? What is the water footprint? What is the circularity of footprint of a material when it comes and come up, preferably in good available time, if we come up with a national database on the material passports. How from car-centric design, and the pictures that I'm sharing out here are nothing that are anticipated. These are the examples exemplary, things which are already existing. We can all learn from them, implement them, replicate them, and scale them up in already the problematic statements that are existing. Wherever we have car-centric districts, can we come up with a nature-centric district where we bring in more greenery, waterways, more pedestrian paths, more cyclists, so that the same buildings can be approached by less carbon footprint? In a hospital in UK, which is nature less, as compared to in Singapore, which is nature rich hospital, where nature is brought a part of a therapy out there, not for just for humans, but also for the climate. Housing and rent, which is a huge crisis. Why is it that we have this kind of a premium spots bought by the people who have the money, glaring loud in front of it that this space belongs to them? Why can't we have a center or a state take charge of this housing, where affordable social housing, affordable not in the sense that it is low in quality, but which is affordable in actually in monetary terms with very high standards, which is provided and provides a dignity of life to even to a common man who comes to lives into an urban scape, who has an access to a space which is at least have a kind of a cleanliness and healthiness and a kind of a happiness to it. Private car traffic, as compared to in Beijing, if you go to Curitiba, where public transit has taken precedence over from the private one, so that the carbon footprint or the air quality is contained because of this, I'm reminded of Delhi. Corporate oil drilling can be replaced slowly. Unfortunately, we have made a kind of a big, giant steps have been taken. Community microgrids could be brought in, as in Kenya, as we go into Himalayan regions, as we go into the coastal regions, as the tornadoes or earthquakes are coming, the microgrids actually bring a kind of a resilience into the things, even in the wake of the climate risk, as we've been seeing in terms of flooding or other climatic conditions, vagaries. This is our own example, the last one in business. It comes from our Mumbai, where the whole community works together, and the leader of that organization has taken it as a policy decision that whatever the profit will come to the business will be proportionately will be distributed to all the workers together. And that's how we basically redistribute the economy to all the people who are basically contributing that to that growth of the company, or to that nation, or to that world for that matter. So these are the very good examples that a mindset has to change from me to we, to circular, to linear, to circular, to degenerative, to regenerative, to think not from GDP perspective, but from the donut economics perspective. And it's not a hockey stick of a permanent, of an upward growth that keeps happening at GDP, but it's somewhere stagnates, and it's actually taken in a worst case scenario and an F shape that it can take. Can we do that? Can we approach that kind of a design thinking when we are talking and designing our cities and villages, bringing that kind of a thinking approach into urban transport, into our buildings, how we manage our water, how we are managing our solid waste, energy efficiency, renewable energy solutions, agriculture, most importantly, and how do we bring this kind of a data smartness into our healthcare and education so that it is available to all the people who are not even able to come to places in urban cities and have access to such things. I was also fortunate to be involved with Mr. R.K. Gautam, a very good colleague of mine, in doing a kind of studies that we had done for climate smart village, where we had aggregated data from different places and have seen that state policies, national policies, availability of funds from the business houses and from the CSR, when it is very wisely channelized for economical, social, technological advantages for the community, actually we can touch upon the lives of the people in terms of their livelihood, education, food security, agriculture, skill development, rural entrepreneurship, ecotourism. Avenues are many. We just have to bring our efforts together and keep that non-cuckoo approach and have those planetary boundaries into our mind and the social foundations into our mind, and see what are we doing, why are we doing, what are we breaching, and what are we taking care of. With that note, I would like to conclude and say, I'm a learner, I'm just sharing, I'm not an expert. I welcome all the questions. I'll try to answer as many of them. I hope I was able to at least trigger some thoughts out here. That was an effort out here. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Wow, wonderful session, Dr. Kaval. I have done my bachelor's in economics, and trust me, it was very boring. You have made all the concepts so much more interesting, especially through your usage of all the analogies that you've used, like the cuckoo's nest and also monopoly and other things. I would like to have Miss Priya Shaha to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you.
Thanks, Manavji. Thank you so much, Dr. Kaval, for this enlightening and interesting session. Just like Manavji said, your examples of cuckoo's nest.
Just a second, Priya ma'am. I have a few questions. Just a second. I think we should take the questions before we take the vote.
So Manasvi, Priya can just conclude and we can take the
Okay.
question answers. So Priya, your job is to have a summarizing session and not only vote of thanks, please.
Sure. Thanks. So I was just saying the same thing, that her examples of the cuckoo's nest, monopoly, game, etc., which would have a very long lasting impact on a person's mind, whoever has been hearing right now on the session, as well as whoever hears the session on YouTube later on, that subconsciously and consciously we would be aware of what wrongs we are doing with our environment right now, on which we are so dependent, and how we can contribute well to our environment by either taking certain steps which could lead to growth of the environment, betterment of the environment, and certain things which would stop the further deterioration. As she has already mentioned, we are almost either we have crossed the limit, or we are very much there, or in certain cases we have crossed the limit by far at a level where we have to really work hard to come back. So going by all these things, understanding exactly how the human nature balance has to be coming back to us, so that we could leave something for the next generation and for their betterment, so that they know a planet as we have known, or our previous generations have known. So I would really, really congratulate Dr. Kaval for this session, and not to leave out on the GDP definition, which obviously, being human beings, the main thing that differentiates us from other animals and all is our emotional thing. That is not being accounted for enough. Not enough, but not at all. So yes, it could be a goal, but it should not be something we want to live for and live by. Thank you so much, ma'am, and look forward to the further questions that Manavji is going to handle. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Priya ma'am. So I have got two questions from Ketki Kasbekar, who is also a part of Narelco. The first one is the system of carbon credit and trading the carbon credits sufficient to tackle the challenges of planetary economics?
Interesting question. Thank you. This comes from Ketki, yeah?
Yes.
Dr. Ketki, yeah, thank you. See, my personal opinion is this, that we are so engrossed in combining the data, which is nothing but an outcome of a certain effort. So carbon credits is nothing but, it's like a company, you run a company and then you do an audit and you have a profit loss statement, right? So carbon credits are nothing but like a carbon, equivalent to profit loss. So what you have done, what is your role in your organization to increase its footprint, to grow it in its own business format is important. Similarly, for sustainability, it is very important that how much of sustainability inputs have been put into place so that the carbon credits at the end of it will look good on your sheet. So I won't go from the carbon credit point of view, but I'll go into from your organizational point of view, that when you are conducting your businesses and your lives, how are we doing that? And once we have done that, of course, data takes precedence. In fact, there were 2-3 slides which I omitted out in the end, that digital twins, for example, into the which gathers the data of every parameter of a building, and it tells you what is your energy footprint, what is your water footprint, what is your carbon footprint. It tells you that at a particular time and a second, how well that system is basically performing in terms of its own KPIs. So carbon credit is a good business of sustainability, I will say. It gives you incentivized to do something good, but keep your focus on the work. That what is important is that what are your sustainability solutions that we are incorporating into our work life that is giving rise to that carbon credit. Dr. Ketke, I hope I'm able to answer that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kaval. There's one more question again from Dr. Ketki. With the growing needs of the human race, do we see a way where the planetary resources can be utilized to sustain the human race?
Sorry, please, you have to repeat the question again.
Yeah, with the growing needs of the human race, do we see a way where the planetary resources can be utilized to sustain the human race?
So there are two thoughts to it. I mean, I think I've already covered up that we can't go linear. Population is definitely a very big problem. So as Prime Minister has come up with this new work, a new program called Lifestyle for Environment, it is a very, very important thing that we should all adopt at our own personal level, and we see to it that our own carbon footprint for living a life of luxury. I'm not saying that life of luxury should be avoided, but how we do that, it is very important. We don't take, use, and throw, but we circulate it. So that's a circular economy. How do we bring those systems into back? Do we go and purchase things which are organic? Do we go and things and see whether they are produced locally? Do we go and see whether things are made with circularity into it, recycled materials into it? Do we promote the local person who's selling it into our own community, who's hand to mouth in his own life? Do we help that person and not depend on those, shall I take the name of Amazons and Flipkarts to always deliver that into or that 5-minute delivery, which is actually creating havocs? These are points of debates. MAHI should take up these kind of conversations into deep thing. And I'm glad to answer this question into another aspect, which I didn't touch upon is, again, I would love to come back and speak on this one, is the biomimicry, nature-based solutions that we need to think. Yes, we can grow, keep growing it. We can bring nature-based solutions into our life and mimic the way how nature is doing it so that nothing goes into the waste. Everything remains in the loop. The air, water, soil, if it is not spoiled, but we keep doing and making things out of it for our own comfort, there is nothing wrong with it, right? But the wrong is into it, that the kind of pollution that we are doing it and how mindlessly we are mining things which we know are limited ones. So that thought process has to change. I think I'm again reminded of another person who influenced my thought process at WED, that sustainability should not be looked at from a perspective of not having. It should be actually looked at from a viewpoint of abundance. The happiness will come from the perspective of abundance. We have enough, but how do we create that is very, very important. So my answer to you is yes, there is a way to grow, keep taking care of our needs, but how we do that is very, very important. Population definitely is a problem. We need not go mindless into that direction. Let's think about it, where we need to put our foot down and where not. These are the some things few points that come to my mind, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ketkitai has texted that your answers were very informative and you answered her questions very well. Thank you so much. If anyone else is having any questions, please put it in the chat box. And until then, Dr. Kaval, can you just stop sharing your screen? We'll just take a nice group picture. Yeah. Thank you so much. Bhanavi, I hope you have also taken a picture. Yeah.
I'll take one without my specs. I think it is reflective. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah. I don't think there are any more questions. Okay. It was lovely to have you, Dr. Kaval. We would like to have one more session with you on some other topic someday. So thank you so much. Let's meet again. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you,
having me.
Dr. Kamal. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Smita. Thank Manasvi Anshul. I'm glad to be here. Priya,
Thank
to
you
you
so
as well.
much.
And MAHI is a lovely platform to meet, and glad to be with you girls again. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank
And I
you
would like
so
to
much.
thank the lovely audience as well.
Yes.
They all have given us excellent patient hearing. And this session is also live on YouTube. So you can definitely look forward to it. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.